What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is the 29th episode of Gotham City Chronicles, so I'm going to bring JP in right away here. Episode 29.
Hello.
So 28 other stories we waited on to cover, which is one of the arguably best Batman stories in existence.
I think most people that make a list is going to put this
somewhere.
Top 3 at the worst, pretty much. It seems like maybe top 5 at the worst. But yeah, it's always going to be up there for sure.
Yes. So because of how obvious that is, and because we started the whole show with the other one that's kind of in that bucket, which is Year One, we decided to wait a minute on this one. So episode 29, not too shabby.
3 years, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And to help us round out this discussion, we found a first-time reader of The Dark Knight Returns. Which is, I didn't expect my first, one of the first people I reached out to for interest to be a first-time reader. So that was actually kind of a little bit of magic there. So I am talking about, of course, Simple Simon. What's up, bro?
Finished.
There you go. He crammed it. He crammed right to the final. This, we'll go light. We'll go light on the scoring for retainment of all the information, knowledge, dialogue, art, etc. Because there is a lot. It is interesting. It will be interesting to hear a little bit about what a first-time reader of Dark Knight Returns in 2022 and what that looks like. But I read it 20-something years ago for the first time, and it was old then.
Yes.
So another 20-something years has passed, and I don't know how many times I've read it. I've lost track on Year One of how many times. I've lost track on Dark Knight Returns how many times. I would say I retain more information from Year One because I would say it's simpler to follow throughout, and Dark Knight Returns offers a little bit of a more challenging read, and i.e. a lot more text and juxtaposition of different people talking on screen at the same time and from panel to panel and non-traditional kind of panel to text layouts and all sorts of unique things, I would say, in this. But this was technically the first Frank Miller on Batman book. Year One came afterwards, so technically this is the release order would be to read Dark Knight Returns first, then Year One, right, and then some of the follow-ups to Dark Knight Returns, which I have yet to read. I've not read any of those follow-ups.
Me neither.
Who wrote Year One?
Sorry, what did you say, Simon?
Who wrote Year One? Was that
Frank Miller wrote Year One, but David Mazzucchelli or however you want to pronounce,
the art.
He was his art partner on Year One. But it's Frank Miller's came up with it. It's Frank Miller's. Both of them are Frank Miller stories. Year One takes place in the continuity of this Batman's life. So now that you've read this story, if you have Year One in your head, you can be like, oh, that is the origin story for the old guy Batman that I read in this. Yeah. And most people read this first and then got to go backwards and read, or not most, but the people who grew up with comics in the 80s, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
I actually had the opposite experience. I actually read Year One first, I believe. Since I only got around to these Frank Miller Batman stories in the 2000s, right?
Yeah.
I just could read it in whatever order I chose, right? At that point,
I think I read Year One considerably before I read this one.
Yeah, same.
I don't think I read this till maybe 10 or 12 years ago. I was late ever reading this one. I know.
Yeah.
Like I had read Year One a couple times. I've only ever read this a couple times. This is probably the first time I'd read it in 10 years.
Right. Like Year One, like Year One's my number one. I read it every single year without fail, pretty much. Like it's because it's easy for me to get through, and it's also my favorite. Right. This one's definitely a little bit more of a challenge to just casually read every year. It's very heavy also, but it's a much more complex read than Year One is.
Well, it's a lot denser. Look at some of these pages.
Definitely a lot denser. Yeah, a lot of text, lot of television personality commentary throughout, weaving in and out of the storyline. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Yeah,
just like,
and we'll get into it. I mean, I brought the noir edition here, which I can go full scale here, so you can actually see with the interior without the coloring, the Lynn Varley coloring, who's of course the ex-wife of Frank Miller. But this is a cool way to experience the story as well. Of course, you got the regular trade paperback, and I also actually read it digital on my iPad for the first time this time around, just to make it somewhat different for me since I've read it a bunch. But before we dive further into Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and Lynn Varley, let's say a quick hello to the chat. We had some stragglers here. We had Unruly. What's up? We had ML. What's up, Mikhail? We had Jeff Wedding. What's up, Jeff? Unruly saying he changed bats forever. Yeah, I mean it's crazy how long ago he did that. But this particular story was the beginning of a drastic shift in mood, tone, and attitude around the Batman character in the Dark Knight. We have C-List Iman saying what's up to Simon. What's going on? We got the Simply Incredible podcast. What's up, Simply? And we got John's Comics with Kids, a multiple guest here on the Batman Book Club show, Gotham City Chronicles. Unruly says he got an oversized edition. Was there an artist edition, Unruly? Like where they actually
there was an absolute.
There was an absolute, but there was not an artist edition, right?
I don't think so, but I could be wrong on that. Unruly might know.
I don't know, but I know
there's an absolute.
I've never seen one out there or in person, so.
Yeah. I've never seen an artist edition. I know there's an absolute edition, which is like.
And then we also got Rock City Comics in here, talking about missing his Aussies due to the YouTube algorithm. I mean, the YouTube algorithm messes everything. John's Comics Kid says he finally read the third part of Miller's Dark Knight trilogy last year. Not great, but glad I read it. Yeah, I have yet to read Dark Knight.
Either of them.
Strikes Back or Strikes Again or whatever it is. That's the second one. And then I've not read Master Race. This might be the year that I finally buckle down and read those two, since we've now finally covered or are covering Dark Knight Returns on this podcast. But
at some point I should read them. But the only other Frank Miller one I ever dove into was, what was it, All-Star Batman and Robin or whatever?
Right, yeah.
Which they didn't actually
more recent. Yeah, more recent.
Wasn't there another one that came out just like a year or two ago?
Yeah, Golden Child. I haven't read that either. But that's, I think, even more of a departure, because it's not the same. It's like a different character, right? Like it's
I don't know.
Timeline. I don't even know enough about that to even speak on Golden Child. I have a copy of like the floppy comic that came out, and I think there was 2 covers. I don't know if I have both covers, but anyway, haven't read those yet. We got Sharon, Life with 2 YouTubers, saying 3 of her most favorite people. Appreciate that.
Sharon.
And I think that's it for the roll calls right now. Unruly says if there's an artist edition, he's unaware of it. And John says he doesn't hate the sequels, but they're not as good. Yeah, fair enough. Supergirl mostly. Is that on Master Race or on Strikes Again? I have not.
Golden Child, maybe.
Or Golden Child. Yeah. See, I have not. I have not even cracked open a single page of either of those 3.
Yeah, me neither.
All right, let's get into Dark Knight Returns. I feel like I've read this so many times, and I've talked about it with so many other comic book collectors and Batman people in general, but we haven't done an official show about it. So it's kind of interesting to be doing it. So maybe should we start with the first? Let's not put too much pressure on the first timer here. Yeah. Let's start with JP and just some general thoughts or any observations or comments you want to say about it.
Before we started the show, and when my Batman reading was more limited, it was always like my big 4 were when we started going to this. My 4 favorites were Year One, this, Long Halloween, and Hush.
Right.
We've read all 4 of them now.
2 Miller, 2 Jeff Loeb.
2 Miller, 2 Jeff Loeb. And Year One, Long Halloween held up just like I remembered. I loved them just as much. Hush did not hold up as well. So I wondered how well this would hold up, given remembering some of the political stuff, commentary in here, and a lot of the other stuff that's going on, and the way the world just is right now. I wondered about it. And this probably won't make any sense, but for me, it held up better than I expected, and yet in some ways not as well as I suspected it would. There were aspects of it that I enjoyed more than I thought I would, and then there was other things I was like areas where I wasn't worried about it holding up, and I was like, that's not as.
I mean, do you want to say a couple of those examples like right now, or do you just want, or you want to hold off?
Well, I can save them for later, but yeah, okay. It's just like, and nothing major. It's still, for me, it's still going to be easily top 5. I don't know if it's still number 2, like it's always been, but it's probably still number 2. It's right there. So
yeah,
it didn't change my opinion a ton. I will say that.
Got it. So revisiting it more or less kept it where it was. Revisiting it more or less kept it where it was for you.
I would say it's not quite as high as I had it before, but it didn't slip enough that like it's really going to drop down the list very much. Because before I had Year One and this were like way above everything else.
Right.
And like now Year One is way above everything else, and this is down there with the Long Halloween, the White Knight, the Cult, the Court of Owls kind of stuff. It's in their neighborhood. I think it still probably falls out just ahead, but it's in that kind of neighborhood for me. If that makes more sense.
Right. Simply Incredible's calling out some good stories. Hush, Death in the Family. We've covered all those. So Simply, if you have hours to kill, you can go back to the Gotham City Chronicles playlist. We have read and talked about 28 other Batman stories, and both of those are in there. But I'm sure there's plenty that we have not covered. Okay, so I'll go real quickly before we get to the newbie's thoughts. The noob, the DKR noob 50 or whatever. Wait, is your channel name still the new noob, or is it just...
No, so my channel name's always been Simple Simon, but because it's not the most, it's a common name, obviously. On Instagram, I couldn't.
Oh, on Instagram, it's the new noob.
On Instagram, it's the new 50 noob.
New 50.
As a play on the new 52.
That's right. Unruly is calling out some good stuff about sort of the aftermarket. I mean, because that's like a tidbit that I would never have because I was not buying comics.
Well, you can imagine. You think about what Batman was for a long time, and we always think about how he got darker and changed in the 80s and like 80s and 90s and stuff. And this was the start of that. I mean, not the start probably, but this was.
It was the start of revisiting what the original Golden Age Batman character sort of had some allusions to in the Golden Age era, although the language is completely different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the art vibe, the art style, and the overall ethos of the character is more aligned to, pre-Silver Age or whatever. But, okay, so quickly, before we move on to the noob's thoughts, I'll just say that, I at this point, I've read this so many times that it's not like I have any drastic, like shocking revelation moments when I read it anymore because the story's already there, right, in my head. It's just a matter of like the dialogue specifics and stuff between two characters, or some of the narration lines stand out more, every time I read it, especially the thematic things about death and life and, is this a good death? And like, I think the first couple times I read it, I didn't realize how important that dialogue was, or that, that prose was. But the more and more I read it, the more those kind of dots get connected, and the more that those kind of moments stick out to me. And then obviously just the Frank Miller, Klaus Janson collaboration on the artwork, which at the time was like really moving the needle away into a unique style and direction. Like I don't know that, somebody who just got into comics in this modern computerized era would even recognize it as like art, or comic art. They'd be like, what is this?
Yeah.
It really, I think it was really, really cool and different. I'm not going to say it's the best Frank Miller work. Like for me, that's 300, Sin City, and some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And Daredevil, of course. His run on Daredevil. And I prefer the artwork in Year One because I just prefer Mazzucchelli's.
Absolutely, for me.
Or whatever. And similar to you, JP, like not really gonna. My score is not gonna go up or down really. Like I pretty much have had Year One at the top of my. And Ronin is awesome as well. Yeah, great call out. I forgot that. I'm embarrassed that I forgot that. But but year one's always been kind of at the top for me, and the number 2 position has kind of changed around often. But it's been Long Halloween for quite a while now, and it hasn't changed. This is kind of my number 3 these days.
I think that's probably where this ultimately is for me.
And I know we don't usually start these discussions by ranking it, but we've put this off so long by not including this seminal Batman story in any of our Batman conversations that's my only natural way to start the discussion from my end. Now, let's go to Simon, who, having just finished it minutes ago.
After starting it 3 days ago.
When you hit me up and you're like, do you want to do Dark Knight Returns? And you're like, and I told you I hadn't read it. You're like, I didn't think it was possible to find someone in the community who hadn't read it, right? So if I'm going down, I'm not going down alone. I found out that Night Tiger hadn't read it. He was like, Metarog gave him a copy and he never finished it. Bub's World hasn't read it, and Super Russ 9000 also has not read Dark Knight Returns.
Wow, Russ.
Super Russ, really? I'm surprised at Super Russ.
Russ said to me, he goes,
more
just
of a
watch the
Superman
movie,
guy.
man, you'll be fine. And I was like, I'm not going to cheat them out, man. I'm going to read the book.
Oh, there's plenty of Superman in this for Super Russ. So.
Yeah. So also, I figured to give a background on my reading as well, as far as like being a noob. So obviously, I only got into sort of comic books again like 3 years ago, and I was actually sick one week, and I found a small stash of comics from when I was a kid, and I had Death in the Family. So I actually read Death in the Family, and that kind of was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I really enjoyed it, because growing up, I was never a reader. Like I've completed maybe 3 novels in my entire life. Like,
right.
I struggle to read. So when I read Death in the Family, I was like, this is really cool. And so I started getting into comics, and I was like, it's cool that I'm reading something, right? So reading this, I was like, oh, I'll give myself 2 days to read this. It's just a thin book.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, I only started yesterday. So I literally.
So there was back in the 80s, back in the Copper Age, there was probably a much larger ratio of words to page, or, like that. Like today, it's like, you're lucky if you get dialogue on a page. It's like, wow,
right? So
they took the effort to write dialogue for 2 characters on a page. Like, okay. But,
so I was going to start reading these 2 days ago, and I just didn't get around to it. And then yesterday I was like, okay, I have to read this whole book today, but it'll be easy. And then I opened the first page, and it wasn't even 12 panels. It was 16 panel pages. And I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? It was something else. So for me, I guess because the way I started reading once I got into comic books was I just went straight into the modern. Like I just jumped straight into Batman in the middle of Tom King's run.
Yeah,
and that's,
the opposite of something that's killing children for sure. On the number of dialogue.
I haven't gone back and read a lot of the classic stories. So I think Hush, apart from Death in the Family, I'd say Hush is probably the only other book that I've really gone back that I'd consider classic that I really should have read.
Which is what? So or mid 90s? Not early
2000s. 2003.
Oh, 2000. So even later, yeah. For some reason, as time goes on, I keep thinking Hush is like mid to late 90s. But yeah, it's even later than that.
Yeah.
So reading this, I would say it wasn't an easy read at all.
Definitely not an easy first time read, even if you are familiar with reading a lot of the classic Batman stories, Copper Age books, Bronze Age stuff.
Like that week when I picked up Death in the Family, if I picked up this instead, I don't know if I would have gotten into comics.
Right.
It was very. I found the story very confusing, for me anyway, just because of the way you'll have 16 panels, and like panel 3 and then panel 12 will just be something else going on somewhere else. So jumping back and forth, like sometimes there's like 3 things going on in the one page. It was kind of hard to follow sometimes, like for me.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment given your experience with comics. I think people who have more experience reading older books are more used to that, like because there's a lot of panel layouts that are directly meant for you to like focus your eyes on just the top row and then move your eyes down and then read across, and then move your eyes down, read across. But then sometimes it deviates as well. So like, depending upon your reading level of experience, you may or may not be trained for where your eyes should go. and therefore you might be looking at one image and reading the wrong text.
Yeah, I
You
did.
don't
I did
know.
find that a couple of times. Like I've gotten good at that in modern comics, but this definitely there was a couple of times I was like, oh wait, was I supposed to read that then or this?
Well, I want to dive deeper there into your experience then, since pretty much everybody else has read it. Is there anything about the overall storyline to you that didn't make any sense at all, or that you were so confused about that we could maybe help clarify or anything like that? What's up, Kenneth Bird in the house?
Look, off the top of my head, I can't think of something right now. But I think as you guys talk more about things that happen in the story, I'll probably be like, "Oh yeah, that's right," because I didn't get what was going on there. But like, there was definitely moments that.
How did you feel about the art? Because it's different, right? Like it's more akin to like Tim Sale stuff.
There's some of it that I like, and some of it that was not my thing. I hated how Alfred was drawn.
Okay.
Like he had a banana head, like it was really long. I really
he kind of
enjoyed.
had a tall neck at the very least.
Yeah.
I like the way the Joker was drawn when it was leading him into the story, and then once he got into the story, there was just a couple of times where he was drawn completely different, where he had the big, thick, wide shoulders and all that, and I was like, it threw me off a little bit. Carrie Kelly was drawn well, but I just thought it was kind of odd the way she kind of just became Robin.
Right.
Like she just
this is technically where she debuted as a character and sort of eventually has kind of taken on like an iconic status as like one of the more famous depictions of the Robin, or different alternate depictions of the Robin.
She doesn't really show up in anything else, but
she does. She does actually in other more recent DC continuity. I don't know what's canon and what isn't with that.
I was going to say, I want to see if they'd ever used her in canon or not.
They have. They have canonized her, but I don't know all the details. But I know that at various points I've seen other comics, and I've even seen some original art with Carrie Kelly on it that has nothing to do with Dark Knight. So
I don't think I knew that.
I didn't have enough time to research that specifically before we did the show, but I was kind of curious if like what the rights scenario is around that or anything, if there is anything. But yeah, I think that's an interesting observation. To me, I think the Carrie Kelly character design, along with the old Batman, 55-year-old Batman, worn, has not been Batman for a decade, has been, chilling out essentially, right? And done with that life. Bringing that version of kind of like a bulkier, more worn from his injuries and his body perspective into the Dark Knight suit in this, those two things have become so iconic. Yeah, there you go. What's up, aficionado in the house, Jimmy? But yeah, I mean, those character designs specifically of this particular version of the Batman and Robin, Carrie Kelly, I think are, the thing that has impacted Batman culture, Batman, or even just larger pop culture in general. Like if you look at Ben Affleck's portrayal of Batman in Batman v Superman and the other Snyder films, that's essentially this version of Batman from a suit and character design standpoint.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to see. And then you even get sort of the mechanized bat suit that he's wearing when he battles Superman in book 4, right? Which is a major part of the sort of the story arc of Dark Knight Returns is Bruce / Batman's, kind of his rating with the government and is going down. Superman is like the lackey essentially of the government, and they are at odds about that, right? It's just which to me is a very interesting part of the book. The first time I read it, I think I might have been a little bit confused as to why Superman's getting so much screen time, if you will, in this Batman story. But then I thought it tied together nicely by book 4 at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will be honest, one of the things I actually enjoyed more that held up better on the reread is my recollection was that Clark really came off horribly throughout the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And he does not come off as bad as I remembered. Like,
yeah, he doesn't come off that bad to me.
No, and like my recollection was that it was just like Superman. It was sort of a Superman sucks kind of thing that Miller was doing, and it's not really. It's just a different perspective. I don't know that he truly nails where Clark would be coming from, but I do think that he does a decent job of giving their two different perspectives would be, and I think it's close. I don't think it's exactly right. I don't think Clark would do exactly the way typically the way he's portrayed would be exactly the way he responds here, but I do think it's better. That's one of the things I thought was better handled than I remembered. Is the way he handles Superman in this.
I can agree with that. I think probably the first couple times I read it, I was so into the Batman aspect of it that I didn't give maybe enough weight to the Clark and Superman stuff, but probably in the last 5 years, anytime I've read this book, I've paid more close attention to book 3 and 4, especially compared to the first couple times. I was going to open the show with a joke, but I decided not to. But I'll now tell you the joke after the fact, and it won't be funny at all. But I was going to say, Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. Is it the greatest mutant story ever told? I just wanted to piss off some X-Men fans.
There you go.
When the book came out, like, how spaced out was each book?
Good question. Unruly, do you know the answer to that? Because I wasn't around.
Yeah,
because by the time I got to the third book, it felt like there was a bit of a shift in just the way it was done. Even like I remember, like the panels opened up a bit more and things like that once I got to the third book.
Yeah.
So did it come out over a literal 4-month period, or were there any delays or breaks between the issues? I guess the question.
Because like each chapter took me like an hour or so to read.
Yeah,
it was a long day yesterday.
So John's made a couple of comments here. One earlier saying year 1 is ahead of it for me, but mostly because I don't necessarily agree with Miller's view of Batman as a hardcore killer. I can enjoy it as an Elseworlds book. Well, 2 things on that point is, A, it is Elseworlds, right? It's technically not considered part of DC continuity.
Year 1 got pulled into continuity.
Year 1 got pulled in, but this one did not. And that was like post after the fact, really. It was not, from the get necessarily. But yeah, that's a good point by John. Although I do think maybe hardcore killer is debatable, but certainly killer is not, because obviously by the end of book 4 here, he strangles Joker. Is that like the most accurate?
So that's not my interpretation of what happens there.
I thought he broke his neck.
Joker breaks his own neck.
Oh,
because Batman won't do it.
What? I thought Batman did it.
I thought Batman.
Read that whole sequence again. So Joker's talking about it, and Batman's got a hold of him, and he's like, Joker's like, I'm really very disappointed in you, my sweet. The moment was perfect, and you didn't have the nerve. Paralysis, really. Just an ounce or 2 more pressure, and then he's like, do I hear silence? And then you see him start to laugh, and you see him start to strain.
Okay, Joker kills himself is the consensus.
Yeah,
I read it as look, that panel right there. He's got his hands
twisting his own neck.
Yo,
I thought Batman was doing it though.
No,
Batman's hands on him.
You see, Batman's hands are back on himself. Go up to the top. Batman's taking his hands off of him. And they'll never know. So he's like,
I thought it was maybe after he let go, after he did the. I thought he was saying was like.
All right. Well, then I guess I'm curious. Then I guess I'm curious from John as to where the Dark Killer comment comes from. Were there any other sort of confirmed kills in the book?
I was wondering if he was killing people throughout it. I was like, wait, did he just kill that guy?
I did not see any other killing occur personally, like in those battle scenes with the mutant gangs and other villain, the cops. I didn't see any kills, but maybe I misinterpreted that. I don't know, because
I felt
obviously
like there were kills.
I
I
had
felt like it was a prank.
misinterpreted the Joker thing.
So yeah, let me finish reading it, but like he's talking to him and he's like, but then it doesn't matter if he's like, oh, are those sirens I hear coming close? You won't get far. It doesn't matter if you do it. They'll kill you for this, and they'll never know you didn't have the nerve, and I'll see you in hell. And then Batman's commentaries, and with a devil's strength, he twists, and what's left of his spine goes. So
Oh yeah.
the
No.
Joker breaks his own neck.
Right, and that's a direct follow-up to a line I think earlier in either book 2 or 3 where he says Bruce says something about the hundreds or maybe even thousands of people that are dead because I refuse to kill you or whatever. Yeah. Jimmy made a good point. Year One was actually released in the title of Batman. 404, 405, that. So yeah, it makes sense. John saying, I think you could argue, like Snyder fans do, that people could have lived and not died. Yeah, but his use of tanks and guns. Yeah, I will agree. Like it's overall, it's a much more aggressive, ruthless, savage, if you will, almost depiction of the Batman versus other depictions.
And I would say that's the part.
Yo, what's up, Schultz?
That doesn't hold up as well. Is some of his approach to these situations. The way Bruce goes about some of this is some of the stuff that doesn't hold up for me as well as I thought it did before. Like, it does, like his attitude and how he goes about some of these things. And I find it interesting to me is that the government, when I think he's making most of the mistakes and being more violent in a lot of ways, and letting these, like after he took control, like took out the mutants' leadership, letting them run wild and not taking responsibility for them, like the
turning
government
into the sons of the Batman.
Yeah, and the government's not got any consequences for that, and he's not stepping up and taking responsibility for it. But then after the weapon goes off, and he does step up and actually starts doing what I think he should be doing more of.
The Corto Maltese.
Yeah, after the Corto Maltese stuff.
What was that Russian nuke called? The Harbinger or something? Or like
the Coldbringer?
The Coldbringer. Yeah, the Coldbringer. Yeah.
But like after that, I feel like he's actually doing a better job, and it's at that point that the government sends Superman after him.
Right.
Which I find is, but like I think like his attitude and approach to a lot of this, because particularly the early part when he's starting to be Batman again, and you get the Batman voice is very. That doesn't work for me as well as it does later when he starts to actually figure out how he should be more effective.
Right.
That's just for me on a lot of this. But
Fair enough. Simon, any other observations, just generally speaking, about the story or the philosophy? I guess is kind of what we're diving into here regarding the portrayal of certain characters.
Well, yeah, like definitely the tank bit. I was just like, I mean, someone died there, right?
Yeah, right. You would assume.
Someone definitely died,
but you don't get actual confirmation.
It's kind of like it's like a Drago, If he dies, he dies.
But and I love Miller here. Is like, it feels like he just wanted to draw a tank and guns and Batman using it. And then he's got the little throwaway line. Rubber bullets, honest. Like, and for the record, rubber bullets can kill people. Like,
yeah.
So it's just like, and that's some of the stuff that just doesn't work for me as well. It's just like, okay, like, and this tank design is just.
Yeah, I hated it.
I do not like that tank. I've never liked that tank. I've always thought that was a terrible design.
Yeah, this is one of the stories where you feel like you don't really get a true Batmobile. You know what I mean? Although you could argue that the Nolan films didn't give you a true Batmobile either by going with the Tumbler, Batpod, that hybridized whatever that was, right?
Yeah.
You could argue that he maybe took inspiration from this by having something just totally off the wall, and not what you would expect, I guess. Any thoughts about the ending where it's sort of I mean, spoiler alert, obviously, but this whole thing is spoilers. But the world is basically made to be known that Bruce Wayne was Batman, but that he's dead, and that his fortune disappeared, and that the Wayne Manor burned to the ground
on the cave or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Alfred passed away from a stroke, I believe.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the story. I mean, they do kind of show the moment of his realization that he's passing. Yeah. And then
later, so.
Right, and then I guess whatever solution that they had to fake his death, Clark heard that with his super hearing, right? At the funeral, which Selina was there, Gordon was there, and Clark was there. And he was the one I don't know how that storyline continues on into Master Race or Dark Knight Strikes Again, or if it even does, right? Because I haven't read those, but that's kind of where we leave it, and then you kind of get a page where Batman's doing what JP you just said a few minutes ago that you wanted to see more of him doing, and that's kind of like organizing all the chaos around him for the better,
trying to do better.
And I grabbed this, I think, hold on, let me see if I can find it here. I'm trying to do a share screen. Right here.
I didn't like that he faked his death. I thought it was cool that he died.
Yeah, well, that's fair, right?
Like,
I mean, that's definitely a fair.
I mean, when I was reading, he was about to kill Superman, but then he had a heart attack. So like, oh, okay,
right.
He would have won. But then, like, I felt like it was a bit of a cop out that they fake his death because you clearly see him like lying there. Like, wouldn't that have been unnecessary, that panel at the top, like where he's like Kent's like racing him and stuff? I would have been like, wouldn't I have just sat there and discussed how they were going to fake the death?
All right. Well, StreamYard is not letting me share my screen, so I don't know what the deal is. But
it's done some. I think it's done some update, and you've got to go into your settings. And
it's giving me all this. You got to do a whole bunch of stuff and restart Chrome. I'm not doing that right now.
Yeah. No, because you got to like completely restart like Google Chrome to like.
Yeah, because I was going to show a picture of the OA of that final page where it's Bruce on the ground, Carrie on the ground, all the mutants and Sons of Batman around them.
That page.
That page right there. The original art for that sold on Heritage back in 2013 for $46,000, which in 2013 that was a heck of a bargain on that page. The cover to the second book, which is like where he's like this and he's all like grisly looking and everything. That one sold for $478,000 in 2013 on Heritage. Yeah, that one. Yep.
Yeah.
So that sold for $478,000. The splash page that JP you showed earlier of Batman and Carrie Kelly, going like that. It's like one of the more famous splash pages.
Mm-hmm.
That one sold in 2011 for $448,000 on Heritage. And then there was an unused splash page #1 from the first book that sold in 2019 for only $50,000, but it was unused. And right now on Heritage, the cover for #3, the one with Carrie Kelly in the corner and the giant Batman logo, cover to book 3, that is currently up on Heritage right now in their signature auction. So that will be going to live bidding in 7 or 8 days. It's already at 100,000 before live bidding has even started. So, and based on the prices of some of that stuff that got sold in like 2011, 2013, that I mean, it's the weakest of the covers by far, because it's just the big Batman logo and Carrie Kelly in the corner, and it's no full figure Batman on it at all. So I don't anticipate it to go as gangbusters as what the other covers might. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So that one's currently up for auction on Heritage, and expect it.
Sorry.
All good. Yeah, that one right there. So
that one's actually
I did want to have a little bit of a little art insight into Dark Knight Returns here. Obviously, I'll never be able to afford original Dark Knight Returns artwork, but I do have these two as like grails in my collection.
Nice.
This is obviously #1, signed by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. And this is Frank Miller and Klaus Janson doing a blank sketch cover of Dark Knight
Very
Returns Batman. So that's original artwork, not published.
Very cool.
But yeah, definitely some grails for me in the collection. But yeah, where should we go from here? Like I just talked about the covers. Like which of those 4 are your guys' personal favorites? Do you have?
Oh, I think it's still 1.
#1. I mean, it. Here's the thing, like it's iconic, but there isn't a ton of art going on. It's a silhouette, you know what I mean? And the rest
But it works so well.
Yeah. So I hesitate to call it my favorite art, but it's my favorite cover. You know what I mean? For my favorite art,
I feel like that style is not for everyone, though. You know what I mean? Like, why is he so jacked? Like, he's jacked.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was intentionally like a real exaggeration on his part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I see. For me, I feel like because my favorite is 1 and 4.
What's up, musings? Yeah,
And-
the Superman and first Batman one.
And I feel like it would have been better. I kind of wish he'd have stuck with the silhouette kind of style through all 4 of them. I think it would have worked better. Like, I get that #2 is like considered just a classic piece, but I'm with Simon. It doesn't even really fit with his style in the rest of the book, the way how jacked he is.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, so with
like even here, which is like the other kind of like,
yeah,
even here he's not to the degree he is like on that cover.
the other ones, he's hulking out on the other ones.
So for me, some of my favorite artwork in this story are the splash pages, not necessarily the covers.
Oh, for sure.
There's in book 4, there's 2 splash pages that involve horses. Those are probably my 2 favorite splash pages of the whole book. I'm trying to find them right now. Here's the first one.
Is that 4 or 3? Oh no, that is
Book 4.
Yeah.
So that one right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that Tricky Trapster did an homage for me right there with turtles on the horse instead of Batman. That one, and then the next one is from a front view.
With all of them.
With all of them, that's probably my single most favorite piece of art in the whole book. And I'll pull out the black and white versions here, just as a treat, I guess, if I can find them quickly. There we go. There, look at that.
That looks great in black and white.
Yeah, in black and white, this stuff looks so much better to me. No offense to Lynn Varley's work or anything, but it's really cool looking at this stuff in black and white.
So Frank Miller did all the art, right?
No, Klaus Janson inked him, and there were moments, there were periods in the run. I don't have all the specifics off the top of my head, but there were periods in the run that Miller decided to re-ink himself,
Right.
and kind of bypass the Klaus stuff. But I don't have like a blow-by-blow, page-by-page like memorization or documentation of that. We got J Hood in the house. J Hood, the biggest fan, the Killing Joke supporter extraordinaire, that caused the biggest debate on the history of Gotham City Chronicles.
Because what happened? Does he not like it?
Because
JP is a Killing Joke hater. So
I despise the Killing
he
Joke.
hates it.
So,
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and J Hood, came on all excited to talk about Killing Joke, and then
then I crapped all over it.
crapped all over his party. But anyway, sorry. One of you guys was saying something before I interrupted.
I was going to say something about the Joker. Like, I really like the way he looked in a lot of the panels, leading him into becoming a bigger part of the story. And then there's a part once he's in the story, there was just one shot of him that looked really ridiculous. That I really like. This is not the action.
Was that at the fair?
Yeah, like when he all of a sudden he's like gone all big and bulky. It's like there's a
right
real.
there.
That's the main one. There's one where he looks ridiculous.
So,
Or the other ones, he looks like this scrawny,
Right.
Joker.
What's up, Jackson Roykirk? He says he was there when each issue came out, so he's in
This was also very cool when
he's
they
had
did the Selena.
same experience as Unruly had.
They dressed Selena up in Wonder Woman and put her in
Right.
bondage. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was kind of cool. I was like, is she a little too old for a lick-worthy comment here?
Yeah, I don't know if it's Lynn to let go of herself. I don't know.
So I will say, for me, like Miller's art has always like almost even been divisive for me because at times I really really enjoy it. At times I see panels and I'm like, God, that's so like it felt like, and you can definitely see it in his more recent, like later stuff. I feel like he gets inconsistent, like because he's so rough. Like I feel like that at times, like it just gets inconsistent. And there's panels like Simon talked about that are just like, oh, and then there's other panels like those splash pages that are just spectacular.
Right. Well, I think the splashes have like a real defining look and feel to them. And then the panel pages, especially when you've got a lot of TV commentators,
oh my god,
just splitting the panel work. It's a little bit rougher, looser. I think he, obviously it's a collaboration on the artwork too. It's not just only one guy. Then you also have Lynn Varley on the coloring stuff, where I'm looking at the black and white here and I'm noticing things that I didn't notice. Because of the coloring.
Well, I just think for me, I'm just mostly talking about the line. But yes, the art and the inks obviously have a role in that too. But it just seems like at times, like it just gets, some of these smaller panels just are like, oof. Like it's just like, I'll get that panel done.
Yeah. Like I don't mind it because I dig the sort of rougher, looser Tim Sale kind of style, and I think Tim Sale, I think, took inspiration from this when it came to Long Halloween and the way he approached close character face shots and things like that.
I would agree with that.
Versus the more dramatic scope, bigger image, splash and cover stuff. But I really like the artwork. But I don't like it nearly at the same level as I like the tightness of Mazzucchelli on Year One. Even Tim Sale on Long Halloween I like more than this. Jim Lee on Hush is my favorite part.
Oh well, Jim Lee on Hush is just stupid.
I don't like the story all that much. The artwork is great.
When I read Hush, it was the first time I'd actually read Jim Lee interiors, and I was blown away. So it was the first time I read anything with Jim Lee's interiors.
I feel like
you never read any of the 90s X-Men stuff that he did? The interior?
No, so I was into X-Men a little bit when I was younger, but I wasn't huge into reading it. I don't think Jim Lee was doing the stuff I was reading. I was into it around the time where like Age of Apocalypse and all that stuff was happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I enjoyed the animated series, but I really didn't dig X-Men comics that much back then. And I've never gone to X-Men when I got back into comics. So
yeah, I was more into animated series than reading comics, definitely when I was a kid. So for X-Men stuff, especially.
So Simon, I want to ask you a couple questions, just like your thoughts on things. So we talked a little bit and really talked about the fascist stuff. So what did you think about the politics going on in the back of this? What did you like?
That's what confused me because I'm not into politics at all. So all that sort of stuff, I was just like, it was really dragged out for me. So something that a lot of people know about me is when I first got into comics, one of the things I was like, I should read this. Like the first time I was like, I should read this because it's a classic comic book was Watchmen. Mm-hmm. I really don't like Watchmen.
Really?
This was rough. This was rough to read, and like I enjoyed this aspects of it. Like I wouldn't say I didn't like this. I enjoyed it, but it was a rough read. Watchmen, I can't say I enjoyed it. Like there was one chapter in Watchmen, like the Rorschach chapter, which I read through really quick because it was fascinating. But a lot of it was rough. So there were aspects of this that reminded me of that.
I was curious, and like, because for me, I felt like on the reread after a decade, like, and part of it's just a style because we talked about like in the late 70s, early 80s, and before.
Is this the oldest comic you've read? Like, I don't know if did Watchmen come out before this or after this?
Watchmen would have been before this, surely.
Before this, right?
I don't
know. I don't think so. I think this came out first.
Well, but it had that sense of vibe, like the way it was written and everything. I felt like I was reading a book more than I was reading a comic. So when I bought this last week,
I definitely get that about Watchmen since it literally has book.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So this was 86. Watchmen would have been about the same time, right?
About the same time.
Yeah. I would have thought, because I thought Watchmen was the book that made books more like this.
So I'm really saying it's around the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
Watchmen started a few years before this, 80-81.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, because I was curious. Because for me, and like you said, we talked about earlier, it was a different time, and like so, there's a lot more wordy anyway back then.
Right.
Yeah.
But some of the news stuff, whew, it's just a little thicker than it needs to be. It's just like some of that just goes on, and I feel like, boy, could have edited the crap out of some of that.
So that's a lot of news on one page, and then sometimes you're reading another part of the story, and then it'll just be a random news panel, and then 4 panels later it'll be a random news panel, and I was like, man, just
so
let me.
That's interesting to hear, and almost something I might have predicted for a first-time reader who has not read a lot of older stuff to have that reaction. Like, I have the exact opposite reaction, where like that's one of my favorite elements of Dark Knight Returns is the sort of atmosphere going on between the news reporter stuff, the political figures. Like, it's very reminiscent of the Batman movie that I just saw 4 times, in that aspect.
Doesn't Frank Miller do a lot of that?
But that presents it in a more visceral, visual, and sonically, in a much easier way to digest than reading a lot of stuff and then constantly shifting your focus back and forth. I think that's the constantly shifting your focus back and forth is what makes it a challenge. The content to me is really good for me. I mean, that's just me, But I do kind of agree that potentially if it was like rearranged a little bit or something, or that there might be an easier way to lay it out or something.
Because I get what they're doing. It's like they're playing it out like a storyboard in a movie, right? Yeah. But I feel like it can be done better. Like, I've seen it done better before.
Right, so. But this came out in the mid-'80s. You had not seen it done better before.
I absolutely say, like, I can, like, when I read this and Watchmen, I can understand.
None of the Batman comics you read and enjoy today would really exist without this comic.
Yeah. So I understand as I was reading this, I can understand if I was reading this, if I was a comic book reader when this came out, this would have been like, oh my God, this is so different and stuff. Like, so when I bought this at the shop a week ago, Mark at the shop goes, mate, it is a masterclass in comic book writing. And after reading it, I was like,
and that makes totally sense for Mark to say that.
Yeah, that's why. And I'm like, after reading, I was like, maybe I'm not smart enough to read the masterclass of comic book writing.
So this is where,
I mean, everybody's got their own what they're into,
Yeah, and this is where at the beginning for me, like I said, it both held up better and not quite as good as I thought it would. And like I thought I was gonna be like, my memory of all the newscast stuff was I was gonna be like, oh, I just gotta get through the newscast page, and parts of it, and I just feel like it's just a little. There's too much of it that I feel like that doesn't really add to the story. Like the parts of it that do, I think, are excellent. I just think it's a little too much.
All right, well,
but it's a fine line, and like you said,
I just want to know. I'm going to ask you, both of you, the most serious question about this book that I could possibly come up with here. Now that we're approaching 5-minute warning here till the end, who would you cast as Lola Chong? And if you don't know who that is, that's like the main reporter lady that is in and out throughout.
So let me find her again. Let's see. Let's find with the weird hair.
Yeah, and the glasses.
Well, see, that glass. This lady here.
Yeah. Oh, but not the glasses. Yendel's the one with the glasses, right?
Yeah, Yendel's the commissioner.
Not with the glasses. The reporter.
Yeah, the reporter.
But she has this kind of weird, like, dry sense of humor in ways.
With her crazy hair.
Yeah, and she's like short with people in some, while she's like on air and stuff. She's like, all right, moving on. That's not
like mention Superman, which they're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
They have to pretend he doesn't exist, and it's like,
yeah. So,
who would you cast?
I have somebody in mind, but
all right, I want to hear because I hadn't thought about this, so I don't know that I can come up with it off the top of my head.
The actress's name is I'm blanking on her. Blonde. She used to be on SNL. She's in a lot of comedy movies.
Victoria Jackson?
No.
Oh, Kate McKinnon?
No, older generation Kate McKinnon, like slightly older.
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig.
Okay.
That's who I would cast. Is that
Okay.
that role?
I could see that.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I just when I read her newscasting panels and stuff, I get this kind of like comedic, I don't know, this comedic angle to it in my head when I read it.
Yeah, it feels like a Weekend Update a little bit.
Yeah, Weekend Update. That's where my head went.
Yeah.
You know, so
So a little
Kristen
Amy
Wiig,
Poehler.
Weekend Update. Yeah. Let's see
Well,
that.
Amy Poehler on Weekend Update.
So yeah, there you go. Answering the most important questions here right at the end. No, anything else you guys want to say about this? I mean, I think
I do have one question for you guys before we get to the your wrap up thoughts. So, what do we think of the prototype Harley / punchline that's in here? Which is we see the first time a Joker girlfriend.
Yeah.
What do we think of that?
All right.
I mean, she's not really memorable at all, other than the over the top design, I guess. Like. Boy, I'm glad that's not what we ultimately got.
Oh, there's that terrible Joker that I hated. Look how Buffy is there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the change from how it was to that, I was like, that's a bit much.
Right. That's another sequence. Him going on essentially the David Letterman show is the way that they presented it, with replacing the names and everything. But that's another thing that was, I guess, kind of adapted in film with the Joker film. In a way that fit that film, right? But
I'm trying to find this Joker.
Joker appearing on a late night show.
They don't really make it clear. Like, it's the swastika lady.
Oh yeah. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it looks just ridiculous.
Get the cheeks out. Get the chaps.
Well, that when we were talking backstage, where I was saying there's only a few parts of the book that every time I go back to it and revisit it, I'm a little bit less clear of my memory of those passages, the impact of those passages on the overall story. That's kind of my least favorite part of the whole book is that sequence right there.
And I feel like she's completely unnecessary. It could have been anybody that worked for the Joker. It was just an excuse to draw that over the top, weird, creepy.
Yeah, and look, I appreciate that from Frank Miller. It reminded me of more of some of the artwork in Sin City and Ronin and stuff. You know what I mean? See, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Holdover from Ronin. Yeah, I was like, hey, this feels almost like different Frank Miller stuff in the middle of Dark Knight Returns for a couple pages here, but it ties back in. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's like completely left field, but it doesn't. It's the most, I think, inorganic feeling.
Exactly what I thought.
It definitely is Bridget Nielsen. Yeah.
Oh, for this casting, not for the reporter.
No, but I think that's even what he was stealing from.
Yeah, absolutely, it would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably right.
All
right. So how do we wrap this up? We don't really need to do a ranking conversation. We kind of already got there.
I just said it's not in my top 3.
So I just want to overall, Simon, because you said you didn't like. Just give kind of wrap up your thoughts on it. Like, what did you like about it? What did you not? Because we just to kind of not your top 3, but.
I enjoyed reading Batman's thoughts going into a lot of things. There was a lot of that. So I guess there were just moments in the book where my interest was in there, and then it'd go back out, and then it'd go back in, and go back. So it was mostly like just some of the thoughts that Batman. So a lot of the little grey dialogue bits.
Batman's inner monologue is quite good in this overall, for sure.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah. In some ways, I would agree. It's maybe the best part. Is some of his
Yeah.
I was just curious because it is not and it was me going back and reading it and realizing I needed to give myself way more time than I originally planned to give myself to read this.
Me too.
I could see how a modern comic reader, somebody who was into comics, would read this and not think about it the way.
Yeah, because they're used to reading an issue in 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I've read trades in a day. It's just like even when I sit to Mark, I was like, I can read this in one day, right? And he goes, I was like, it's just a trade. And he goes, yeah, but it's dense. And then now I know what he means. It doesn't normally take me over an hour to read a chapter. So
So
Yeah,
not your
well,
top three, but
3 to 5 minutes an issue times 6 issues is still like under 20 minutes.
yeah.
That's why I can bang through like modern trades in like
Yeah.
literally an hour or less, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different experience. Like it is of an era where there was kind of this other tier of like prestige. I mean, literally was printed on what was called prestige format, size and you know, print quality and all this stuff. And I think a lot of the books from back then are deserving of that title, of that prestige level of reputation. But at the same time, they're a product of their own generation, and over time, they're going to lose that sort of ability to connect with younger readers. Like it would almost be in DC's best interest to do like a retelling or, you know, like an updating of it. And, you know, obviously to some people that would be sacrilege. Like how dare you do that with somebody else or whatever. But in a way, they've kind of been doing it with Sean Murphy and the Murphyverse and trying to create this new Elseworlds version of the Batman universe that's really kind of doing something different, you know, that has its own different kind of prestige format, if you will. So it's cool that kind of stuff happening now. But this is by far a classic in my view, and it's just a matter of like how important it is.
For it being, but yet it holds up better than I feared it would, I guess is the right way to say it.
Well, I don't know if we're having tech issues or the internet or Unruly is having tech issues, but we are at the end of the show here. So do you guys have anything you want to plug quickly? I'm not going to waste time plugging stuff. I think I'm just going to call it here. But if you guys have anything you want to plug, feel free.
Go ahead, Simon.
It's my birthday tomorrow, so I'm gonna wake up and do
Happy birthday.
Oh, well, it won't be my birthday over there. You gotta wait. It's 2 days away over there. But here tomorrow in Australia will be my birthday. I'm just gonna do a little short stream in the morning, just to hang out if anyone wants to hang out, just for an hour, and then that's all I got planned.
Nice, man.
Well, I'll be back on my channel in like an hour and 20 minutes, 20 minutes. We're talking Black Hammer with John and No Good Comics. So we're talking volume 2 of Black Hammer tonight. So,
all right, JB always double or / triple booking himself.
I try not to do that, but
even
this
on
is the only night I'm on this week. So let's do it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate all the discussion and dialogue in the comments. I mean, I haven't done a live stream in 3 months, and usually these are my least attended, whatever. But this is a big story, and I think a lot of people are interested in conversations around this one. So I'm glad to see some discussion going on here. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.